How is it going, everyone? It is time to talk about one of the more anticipated games of the year, and that is Gotham Knights. It is not a full review that we have here. I just beat the game as Nightwing, played as some of the other characters, but ultimately the entirety of the game I did mostly play as Nightwing, so bear that in mind, but I do want to talk a little bit about it. There's a lot of information to go over. I just want to be upfront and tell you guys that Warner Brothers was nice enough to give me a copy of the game early. We got to play through it, and here are my thoughts. I also want to note that this was played on a relatively high-end PC with a Ryzen 7 3700X and an RTX 3080. The system requirements for PC can be found, and it recommended an RTX 2070, and obviously a lot of talk about this game from a technical standpoint, which we will absolutely get into as we progress through this video. From a gameplay standpoint, it starts off fairly simplistic. You'll feel like you're kinda at home if you played the Arkham games, but it does change up quite a bit. It's more of an attack and dodge that boils a lot down to attack, time the dodge, and continue attacking. That's how it starts off as, but it does evolve quite a bit over time. The game is an open world action RPG, and you are leveling up as you're beating up bad guys, doing quests, etc, etc. And throughout that, you'll acquire new upgrades through the skill tree and unlock new momentum abilities. Now, these momentum abilities are really what adds a nice layer to the game. Each hero has a set of momentum abilities that you'll utilize in combat. Essentially, special abilities you can do when a bar, aptly named the momentum gauge, fills up from you doing damage, timing the dodge, and that does add some more strategy to the gameplay. You'll have AoE effects, you'll have stun effects, you'll have moves that do singular damage. For example, Nightwing has a pounce ability that'll jump on an enemy, do some damage, and he can jump back up. He'll have a move where he starts doing an AoE spin around for a while. There's some interesting abilities, and when you have multiple enemies coming at you, that does add a little bit of depth to the combat as well. Even with all that, it does get a little bit repetitive. There's not a gigantic variety of enemy types, and yeah, they do introduce new enemies throughout the games, but it does become a little bit simplistic, and once you kind of figure out what specific enemies do, you kind of figure out the whole process and how to effectively defeat them. Let me note this: I do think the majority of you, if you're going to be playing this game, are going to have a better time playing it on hard than normal. I think normal, all of you guys are going to be able to figure it out pretty quickly, and then it will be smooth sailings. There are a variety of different difficulty options, so if you do want to play it at normal, if you want to go easier than that, I think most of you guys are probably going to enjoy the game most at hard, especially given the fact that if you're doing a lot of the side content, which we'll get into that as well, and staying leveled within the range of the recommended levels of the missions, you're going to do a pretty fine job in taking out the enemy. So playing it on hard, going to add a nice little bit of difficulty to the game as well. As I just mentioned, side content, obviously, we're in a big open world here. They had noted a detailed Gotham City open world to explore, and yeah, this is a gigantic open world, and there is a ton to do. Every night you've got criminal activities, and those are going to come up pretty regularly. Bad guys you can beat up, there's collectibles, batarangs, side case files with some notable enemies, and while the main story is going to take you around 18 to 20 hours to complete, the game is extended quite a bit by all of the side content available. And while the content is super plentiful, I would also say that the criminal activity and the stuff going out in the city, it gets pretty boring and pretty redundant pretty fast, because it's a lot of the same stuff that you're doing. Oh, go here, beat up the bad guys, protect this person. Oh, go there, stop the hacking, beat up this guy. You'll stop some explosives going off. There's not a whole lot of variety in what you're actually doing in the city, although if you just want to constantly go through the motions and do all the content, that is there, and there's a ton to do, and some of the side activities do have high points. Again, the side case files, those are super interesting, but the ongoing elements of the city, I didn't find that all too engaging. Top of that, while the core story seems to be similar throughout each of the characters, the cutscenes and some of the dialogue elements are altered depending on the character you play, so it would be worthwhile to go back and do another playthrough as the other characters. Obviously, from a gameplay standpoint, they've got different momentum abilities, they've got different strengths and weaknesses, so it's gonna enhance the gameplay experience a little bit if you are alternating throughout the different characters. And once again, utilizing the different character is gonna add a little bit of depth to the gameplay. I did personally prefer to just play as Nightwing the whole way through because I wanted to see all of the dialogue elements with Nightwing, and then do another playthrough, and then do another playthrough after that. However, if you do want to switch characters on the fly, super easy to do. Just in your hideout, the Bellevue, you go to the corner, and all of the hero suits are up there. You hold a button and you'll switch characters just like that. It's smooth, it's quick, and it's easy to do if you are trying to play as all 4 different characters in the same playthrough. And they will all level up in sync, so it's not like any of the characters are going to fall behind in level or anything like that. You'll be good to go. And that'll be pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, with my playthrough, Nightwing as a character wasn't all that engaging in the narrative. While it had some twists and turns and definitely heated up towards the end, it wasn't that compelling throughout, and again, it did pick up by the end, but it took a while to get there, and even then, it wasn't a story I was all too engrossed in. This is a lot of fan service here, so if you are a fan, you're gonna find a lot of things to get into, even outside of just the straight narrative. We're talking collectibles, we're talking different lore pieces throughout the game, there's emails being sent between the characters, there's specific cutscenes that kind of develop the relationships between the characters a little bit more, and I wish there was more of that in the game. I wanted to see more of a dynamic between all 4 of the different characters. And while there is certainly some of that there, I think that element could have been fleshed out a lot more. But the times we do get that development between character relationships, I found that very enjoyable. And again, the world is pretty big, and exploration is a joy outside of one major issue, which we'll get into in a little bit. I'm sure you guys can predict what that is. But going from grappling from rooftop to rooftop into gliding and then hopping on the Batcycle to get around Gotham City seems like it should be so much fun, and at times it can be. It's an absolute joy at times. Unfortunately, this is where a huge issue of the game is highlighted, and that is technical performance. Look, we were making a lot of criticism about 30 frames per second, and remember, I have a decent PC with a Ryzen 7 3700X and an RTX 3080, and while in tight corridors and closed levels, the game performs fine. It's when in the open world, exploring on the Batcycle. My oh my, this game has technical issues for days. Horrendous pop-in, frame rate that legitimately begins to chug, stuttering like I could not even imagine, especially on the Batcycle itself. If you thought 30 frames per second was bad, oh, we're going well below that. Now, bear in mind, I did play the game at 1440p, and use the default settings. Now, 3080 is a relatively good GPU that you would think it would be maxing out Gotham Knights. Oh no. It was a mix of medium and high settings, so we weren't even maxing the game out, and we still had a ton of technical issues, and from what I'm hearing, it's the same case as on consoles. While on consoles, it is supposed to be 30 frames per second. Once you get on the Batcycle, once you're doing a lot of that exploration, a lot of those technical issues seem to persist as well. And we're not just talking performance issues in terms of slower frame rate, stuttering, things like that. There's a lot of bugs and glitches as well. I had a glitch where Nightwing was just like fusing with his costume, and just odd stuff like that. Is it absolutely game-breaking? In the case of the frame rate chugging, for a lot of people, that is going to be game-breaking. That is a major issue. And when you're dipping below, 26 frames per second, I legitimately got down to like 24 FPS with a 3080. That's going to be a deal breaker for a lot of people. Obviously, we'll see how patches roll out. We'll see how performance is across the board. I didn't have a chance to test a wide variety of PCs. All I can tell you is my experience with my main rig. So take it for what it's worth. And now, seeing the entire game in action, it's a good-looking game. It's not that great of a looking game, though. There's some nice detail in the world, but at the same time, some poor textures, animations, and so on and so forth. Nothing in terms of visual fidelity makes these egregious technical issues any easier to stomach, so take that in mind as well. So that's gonna do it for me from my first playthrough. There were certainly things I liked. The story had its moments for sure, and I found the interactions between the 4 main characters entertaining, and honestly wish there was more of that throughout the game. There's a lot of content in the game, a good bit of replayability. However, the combat being a bit mundane, if you are switching between the characters, it is gonna spice things up a little bit. The story not all too gripping until the latter portions, and technical issues galore. This is one I cannot recommend you spending your $60 or $70 on. Wait and see if the technical issues are ironed out. Wait for the game to get into that $30 range and pick it up then. That's my 2 cents about Gotham Knights. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know your anticipation level for the game at this stage. Sound off with all of your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.